Hello everyone, welcome to Jump Up Supercast, the only podcast on the internet to be getting an even worse name from Square Enix. I'm Will, and joining me this week, Brandon.
Project. I hate this podcast.
Ills.
It's really not as bad as their worst. Not even close, really.
Sav.
Project Destiny.
And Mina.
Project people talking into a microphone.
And what a project it is, folks. Many people say that this podcast is the president of Square's little special baby. It's his favorite thing. So, if this goes balls up, the company's going under. Just be ready. How's everyone doing this week?
Doing.
Good. We had some video game news. Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah? No kidding? Some weeks we're here and there's not. So I guess it's good to clarify. Yeah, we'll talk about video game news. Why don't we? So I would say there were two people that moved and or shaked this week. I'll let you choose which one we start with. Sony or Square? Which one you want to go with?
Somewhat Square.
Let's talk about Square.
So Square had their first, what was the name of it? Square Enix Presents.
Square Enix Presents.
Where 40 minutes could have been 25. There was...
It was a long video. I watched it after the fact because I knew it would be full of fluff, but Jesus, man, they do not know how to pace a presentation.
There was a cookbook announced, so if you want to...
Tomb Raider
cookbook.
And so, there it is. So if you want to learn how to cook like Laura, now you know, which I guess would just be like whatever you kill in nature. So that would be...
Yeah. So is it cooking like Laura or cooking for Laura? You know, are you one of her butlers in her mansion?
Ooh, good question.
I think it's more like a wilderness thing, you know, like you're cooking in the...
I would
cooking like
a
Laura.
Survival guide.
I would probably play the
Right,
Butler
okay.
game, to be honest with you.
So the more modern Laura type of cooking then.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we did have a couple of follow-ups, but I would say the new announcement, the thing that had been leaked on every corner of the internet, Life is Strange True Colors.
Yep.
Now, this is a couple things of note, right? This is by the devs, I don't have the name in front of me, of...
Before the Storm.
Before the Storm,
Deck 9.
yeah. Deck 9, there it is.
Deck 9,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is in the same universe as the previous games, right? As the name would imply. But it's going away from the episodic format. It's just going to be at once. Just here it is. On September 10th.
Thank
Good.
the Lord.
Yes.
And I think we can get to that a little bit afterwards. But you star as Alex Chen, who is a young Asian American woman with psychic powers. And she's moving to Colorado to figure out what happened with her brother, Gabe. Right? So, you know, definitely a Life is Strange premise, you know?
Also, I mean, they told us right away what happened to him. He's dead.
Yeah.
Dead.
Yeah. But there might be mysteries that ensue. Who knows? First things
In
first.
fact, what the game is about is unraveling the mystery of his death.
Yeah. And so, first things first, I think the episodic thing is is a big change for this series, right? Brandon, you seem to be positive on it. Why are you positive?
Yeah. Because they fucking fucked it up so bad with Life is Strange 2. And I almost think they made it so bad that I think that's why a lot of people didn't experience or care about Life is Strange 2, right? Because that game was supposed to come out in, I think, like 6 months or something like that, right? But it was over a year it took them to release all 5
every
episodes.
episode had like a longer gap than the one before it. It was like that's just, you know, obviously episodic format can work really well, but I think people lose interest when you take that long between episodes.
And I think it really hurt Life is Strange 2 a lot. Like, because Life is Strange 2, I've played that game and I like it a lot. And I think I just don't see or hear people, like a lot of discourse of people talking about it on the internet, really. Mm-hmm. So it just didn't reach the heights that Life is Strange 1 did, for sure.
Without a doubt.
And I think that had a good amount to do with it. And Yeah, and I usually like to wait until it all comes out to play it anyway. So I did it with all of them. So this is good for me. I think for everybody, it's just let me play the whole damn game.
And I think they said something about like the game still being split up into like an episodic structure.
That's fine. I like that too.
That's all right.
So like,
it's good for sessions, right? Like 2 hours, and you can play the next day.
Yeah.
But they're all just going to be out at once, and I think that's good because the model of I think the first one as well kind of took long, especially that last episode, but then 2 just took it to a ridiculous extreme.
Yeah.
So
it was almost like it couldn't even be eligible for rewards because it's like, what year did this game come out? Like it took so long.
It came with the price hike too.
What?
This new
True Colors.
Yeah, so it's a full $60 release now. The other games were $40 for the whole season. This is just a full fat $60 release though, which I think is a little interesting.
Do we know? Because I know that they announced the Life is Strange remaster for the first game, right?
Yeah, first Before the Storm.
Yeah, go Before the Storm with it.
Yeah, and they said that they redid the mocap for the characters in the game along with other stuff. And they say it's going to be bundled with the Ultimate Edition. So do you think that's the 60, or do you think there's going to be an $80 one?
No. We already know. So it's $60 for just the game. I forget if it's $90 or $100 for the Ultimate Edition, but if you pre-order it, it's $80 for the Ultimate Edition.
So 20 for the remaster then.
Yeah,
but it's 8-year-old game.
Yeah, but so the remaster is $40 on its own, and they're gonna sell it standalone, I think.
They are afterwards.
Yeah, but not at launch. But it's it's $40, which is a little pricey. But to be fair, it is one and Before the Storm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. I never played Before the Storm, so I'm a little interested in this. Especially because Before the Storm's not on Game Pass anymore. So, I waited. Maybe I'll actually pick it up now because hey, it's remastered. They did the graphics in True Colors and the animations. They look a lot better than the previous games.
Yeah,
for sure. Like the previous Life is Strange games, they look very janky. Like just in terms like
they're not Telltale, but they're like a tier above. Like they're there's still an obvious element, like when you're walking around where it looks very herky jerky.
Yeah, you could tell those games were on a budget, and I think clearly the Life is Strange franchise is successful enough that they feel they can kind of up the production values, I think that's
nice to know. Yeah.
And obviously, I think Square views it the same way, right? They're doing it up, right? They're viewing this as a important franchise for them moving forward. Hence why they sort of found another developer to keep it going, even after Don't Nod, went to do their own stuff. So
yeah,
it didn't say anything about like changing up the dialogue or anything like that. Did they? Or because I didn't see
anything. Change up the dialogue.
Because I remember, because I always wanted to go back and replay it, but I just remember just how cringy the first episode was in some of the dialogue.
Sav hates Hella. Sav hates.
That was not even like a thing that came into 2. Also, that's not something you talk about. Oh, we changed how we write the dialogue so it's not cringy. Is that what you want them to say, Saf? That's not how they're gonna sell the fucking game.
We updated the vernacular to be less 2005.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is very funny because it was already out of date in 2014, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I can keep that.
It's just so weird.
I think I never had a problem with that. I thought it was mostly funny and charming.
I found it charming.
I thought it was fine because I felt like they were in character in a way. They were what? They were late teens in college, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, and they did not talk like how teens talk, to be clear. But
the point is they don't talk like Like, that's not how teenagers talk. But
I don't know. I think I said hella. I think I said hella a lot.
Okay, when
you know?
were a teenager 70 years ago, Brandon, maybe, but
17 years ago, maybe. Yeah,
that's hella crazy.
Hella is a cool word, all right.
But still, nonetheless,
No,
I found it charming. I thought it was nice, and it's whatever. And they're obviously not gonna update the dialogue. That's just stupid. Come on.
I just can't with that. Like, it's just too.
Can't even.
Can't even. She's all that. So the other thing they showed off that got I would say a pretty major update. Project Athia is now Forspoken. Which, is not Project Triangle Strategy, but what is?
Forspoken doesn't make sense. That's like that. What does that mean?
It describes nothing about the game. Like, you learn nothing about the game by that fucking name.
What does that tell you? Honestly, it's so. But like, this is Square Enix. Like, they make the dumbest names. Like, if you like. You just think of some of the dumbest names in video games, and you notice like at least 80% of them are going to be Square Enix games. It's just that's what they do.
Is that even a real word, or did you just make it up? Just
Forspoke is a word. I don't know if Forspoken is a word, but
I'm gonna search this up. Forspoken definition: to attract and fascinate, enchant, to cast a spell over.
Well, I mean, that is what your protagonist, Frey Holland, does, which they focused a lot on her in this trailer, right? And the actress that's playing her, Ella Balinska, who, I don't know if that's the exact pronunciation, but you may have last seen her in the 2019 Charlie's Angels. So, I mean, not a lot of people saw that movie, but you may have
seen her. Nope, I did not see her in that.
But she is, I'm going to say the curse word, this is an isekai insofar as she's got taken to this fantastical world, right? Has magic powers, and she's trying to survive in this weird world, right? That she's never been in before. And they show a little bit of gameplay right afterwards, outside of that trailer, showing her traversing, right? Casting some spells, like where like vines are up from the ground, stuff like that, right? And they describe it as an action RPG. So this is the Luminous team, right? Luminous Productions, which is they worked on FF15, right? Mm-hmm. And so, what did you get any insight from what they showed here, or do you still sort of feel like you're keeping it at arm's length?
There's a dragon.
There's a dragon.
There's a dragon.
The movement looks super cool in the game. Mm-hmm. We don't know anything about the combat or anything, but the movement looks super cool. So, that makes me excited. I also think it's exciting to star a woman of color in a AAA game. I think that is a legitimately, you don't see that very often. Mm-hmm. Representation matters.
Especially from Japanese devs.
But even from
in the West.
Western games, right? Yeah. Like, how many women of color from a big AAA game can you name? That's the lead character, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really cool that they're doing that. I don't know about the game itself yet. I think Final Fantasy 15 is a very problematic game. Not in the it just
not in the cancellation sense.
A game with issues.
Just like
it's all white, man. We can cancel it.
But that's a game that was very troubled in its development, right? And it shows in the final game. Like, just look at where we put Final Fantasy 15 on the list. It's the final product was not so good, but I think that partially came from Final Fantasy 15 was someone else's vision that was supposed to be spread across multiple games and cross media and all this shit, and they condensed it all into one game. They had someone else do it, and they kind of designed it by committee, and it turned into this weird hodgepodge that we ended up with, right? And it felt like they didn't really even know what they were doing, and even up until after they released the game, because the updates that they came out with the game changed the game even more, right?
Yep.
I'm hoping that this game, this is their own vision from scratch. This is theirs. They're not taking someone else's thing and refine and whatever, right? So this is theirs from the ground up, and so I think that there's reason to be like, okay, this could be good.
I want to give everyone sort of a wash on FF15.
Yeah.
The blame is so diffuse that it's not. It's just everyone was in a bad spot.
You just want to forgive everyone. You don't hold anyone accountable.
But also Tabata, who is the director or producer, I don't know what a big part of FF15. Yeah. He's not there anymore. I'm not saying FF15 was necessarily his fault, but so I don't even know who's in charge. I just hope. I think my biggest thing that I would be worried about coming from FF15 is the combat being very boring, because that's my biggest complaint about FF15. Right?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is the only thing that I would be curious about is this is one where I would like to wait for demo impressions, because FF15, as a few people on Twitter can illustrate, you can get great GIFs out of, right? Like, it can look very impressive what you're doing,
FF15 legitimately looked very good in trailers. Right?
Yeah. But you're actually just holding down one button to do those very impressive things, right?
Yep.
So it's sort of like, are we doing things that are engaging to make these like impressive traversal happen right? Or is it sort of just like we're holding right trigger,
Yeah.
Who knows? This is like the second game to come out on this engine, with this engine, right?
Yes. This is literally the second game.
Good God almighty.
The Luminous engine. I mean, it's funny that they I don't know if this is like a sunk cost thing or what. Because none of Square Enix's other studios are using Luminous anymore, and that was the original goal for Luminous. This is going to be our engine for everything. Kingdom Hearts is going to use it, the future of Final Fantasy is going to use it, and then fucking nothing use it except for FF15, and now this game, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder, does this game just come out of, okay, we just want to squeeze more money out of our investment in this stupid engine, right?
Yeah.
Because everything else they moved on down to Legend 4, right?
Yeah.
And for the better. But
if I were to take a guess, just wild speculation, I would say that it's the Luminous Productions worked on that engine, right? So if anyone's going to know how to get the most out of it without problems, it would be them, right?
Yeah, they already have the technical know-how to make use out of this thing, and so
this is a very visually impressive game, right? This
it's pretty.
Yeah, it actually looks like it's the next gen's game,
I hope the world isn't empty. That's my other thing. I hope the world isn't empty. Because,
sure.
Yeah, it's fun traveling around, but there's nothing doing it. Fucking...
like Final Fantasy 15.
Final Fantasy 15 was not fun to move around the world, to be fair.
True.
Let me make that clear. Traversing in FF15...
But it was also empty.
Yeah, it was super empty, and it was not fun to do it, and that's a terrible combination. That's a terrible combination. So... At least this one will be fun to move in, I guess, even if it isn't.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
I'm cautiously optimistic. That's where I am with this game. I'm not a for sure day one yet, but I am cautiously optimistic. I have reason enough to be optimistic, but,
I want it to be good. I mean, I want every game to be good mostly, but, in particular, you want to root for a new IP a lot of the times,
Yeah, definitely.
I want Naughty Dog games to be bad, just to be clear.
Speaking of games that you can hope against hope, they showed off Balan Wonderworld some more folks.
And it's getting a day one update. They didn't mention it in the presentation. It's in day one.
Is anyone actually excited for this game?
Not in the slightest. I think
I think there was, and I think the demo really made everyone come back to reality.
Demo.
I still am. In a curious, I want to watch this fucking train wreck.
Yeah, but I feel like if they didn't release the demo, there would be enough idiots out there who would want to believe that this could be a good thing and willing to give it a shot. Right?
My hand is raised right now. That's me.
They released the demo though.
I'm one of those idiots.
Yeah,
but I think I think there are people who would have bought it, but then the demo turned them off.
Yeah.
Also,
the demo was so bad. It really I cannot just. I streamed it. You can go watch my Demon Soul streams. Some of them at the end have clips. We played Balan for a little bit afterwards. I cannot describe to you how fucking bad that game is. It feels like dog shit. And so, good luck to it, I guess. It's also insane though. That's the funniest thing. Though. It is. That game is bonkers.
Oh, there were times that I almost vomited from laughing when you streamed it, right? So like, there's still joy, but there's joy that I want on someone else's dime, not on mine. You know?
Definitely not for $60.
Yeah. So that, but they are putting it out there, so they will continue to talk about it. They also went over the Avengers game. Operation Hawkeye launched the day of the presentation, right?
Future Imperfect.
Future Imperfect. And then they announced the War for Wakanda DLC with Black Panther, obviously. And
not coming till fall.
Not coming till fall, full year. Right.
So is that like their next hero after Hawkeye? Is it Black Panther? He's next?
It seems like it. It seems like there's...
Holy shit. You're telling me in a year of post-launch, all you could come out with was Hawkeye and Black Panther, two people who arguably should have just been there from the beginning. Especially Black Panther, right? Who's very popular. Man, that's crazy. Is
it both Hawkeyes or just the one?
It's both. Yeah, it's Kate Bishop and what's his name?
Clint
Barton.
Yeah.
It's just weird, man. This game, like the content pipeline is just tragic.
Well, they have been updating it, right, with stuff that does not include characters, right? But like we didn't talk about this the other week, but they changed the game to make it more grindy. In an update.
Nice. Just what I need.
Yeah, and
they sent out like a message for people like, hey, if you want to grind up to max level, do it now before we change. It's like, why bother?
That's what it needed, you know. Hey, you know, if they make it more grindy, you get more bang for your buck, you know. You get to try a little more.
I mean, that's like that has to be the actual internal logic, right? Is like we'll keep them on the treadmill for longer because we're taking a longer time to get things out, and you're just like, man, that's not how games as a service should operate, you know?
When did they just pull the plug, though? You know, when did they just say, like, this is not worth it? Because, I mean, I can tell you from looking at sales charts, no one's buying this game, right?
Oh, God.
I saw it for $16 today online and said, nah, wait till it's cheaper.
They must still be making some kind of... Sorry.
Saf, are you going to buy Hawkeye?
I haven't even bought Avengers.
Yeah, but like you're Kate Bishop, Mark, right? So like, is there any draw there to you?
Does it convince you, or are you like, yeah, I want to buy Avengers now?
No, it just doesn't look that interesting to be honest with you. So, yeah, but they have to be making some kind of money to be still putting out like. These
I don't think they are. I think Well, first of all, we know they haven't because in their fiscal year earnings, right, they were like, hey, we lost a lot of money on Avengers.
Good call.
All right?
Tens of millions of dollars we've not made back yet.
We've not made our money back yet. And maybe they built... I think, okay, to me, the disastrous content pipeline of this game is indicative of one of either two things, maybe both. COVID, or... the game was such a disaster that they've kind of quietly taken off a lot of the staff off of this game. Are putting the bare bones amount of people just to put out what they promised, because they did promise Hawkeye and Black Panther before the game even came out, right? Yeah. And so they want to live up on their promise. So they're gonna add Black Panther, they're gonna add Hawkeye, they're gonna add Spider-Man. Whenever I don't even know when the fuck Spider-Man's gonna come out. And they made a big deal about Spider-Man.
Not before summer 2021, and it was supposed to be out early 21.
Yeah, well, VGC just put out an article today saying that Spider-Man is not even going to come out in summer.
They said not before.
Oh, not before summer. So, okay, yeah.
So
it's like, you know, and that's a character that's only on one platform, which is its own problems that we talked about. But like, you know, I wonder, is it really just you know, they're just having the bare minimum staff on this thing, fill out our promises, right? We're gonna give you what we promised, but then we're gonna pull the plug, right? Because unless, and you know, maybe it sees a resurgence, and I think that's what they're hoping for, right? But it doesn't seem particularly likely.
Yeah, because I guess it's worth mentioning the thing that came with the Hawkeye DLC is that the next gen versions came out, right? Now, I don't have in front of me what the improvements include, right? But like, I imagine there's a lot of hopes being pined for a lot of failed games on, in the next gen they'll find their audience, right?
Next gen buyers are hungry for games. There's nothing out on these damn systems.
And I've already seen the thread of tweets that they had to send out to how to transfer your save from the fucking PS4 version to the PS5 version.
It's pretty complicated.
It's Pokemon-like in how much complications there are in transferring. But
I mean, with the Xbox version, it's easy as hell.
Sure.
But
the Xbox version won't have Spider-Man.
You're right. Yeah, so take that, idiots.
I mean, it looks as though the upgrade is literally just texture improvements, higher resolution, and just
it's slightly prettier and runs slightly better. Woo!
Yeah.
Faster load times, obviously. Yeah.
Man, I know we've talked about this game on the podcast before, a few times now. But it still just blows my mind when you look at it on paper and see Crystal Dynamics, Marvel Avengers. It should be so simple. When you look at that on paper, you say, this is good. This is a competent developer taking, a well-established franchise that people like quite a lot and putting them together. This should be a hit, right? And man, it's wild that it turned out this way.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but then you add the other part of the equation. Crystal Dynamics making a games as a service game. It's that makes no sense. These people have only made single player games.
And they're not that big. They're big, but they're not games as a service big,
Yeah.
So, the other thing they had was, if you want all those Tomb Raider games we already mentioned, to see where Lara learned how to cook, you can
see a good Crystal Dynamics game.
You can pick up...
learning where Laura cooked is more pressing to me, personally.
The collection's coming out, right? And then it's $20 right now for the next 2 weeks, so you can pick it up. It goes up to $50 after that.
It's a pretty good deal, $20 for all 3 Tomb Raider games?
Yeah,
that's a wicked fucking good deal. Those are 3 quality-ass games right there.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing they announced, too, was just getting an anime with Netflix, because Netflix has 12 different video game animes in development at the same time.
Tomb Raider getting an anime? I didn't see that. That's sweet.
Thank you, Castlevania, I guess.
That's cool. I'm into that.
Yeah. So there's that. There's other stuff. If you want to play Just Cause on mobile, you can do that. If you want to play Space Invaders AR, you can do that. So that was the Square Enix thing. That was it.
Yeah, it was a very boring presentation. It had a lot of mobile shit. No one cares about that. One thing that was interesting, Hitman, they're making a Hitman mobile game, and they don't own Hitman anymore.
I think this is fascinating. Really sorry. So they sold it. So while IO Interactive was working with them, right, they made Hitman Sniper Missions, right, which is considered a separate IP from Hitman. And so when IO bought Hitman, they did not buy Sniper Missions. So Square is still making one of those.
Wait, is that what it is? I thought it was that IO was just working with them with this, or let them because by all accounts the split seemed to be pretty amicable.
Yeah, because IO came out and said maybe their wording threw me off, right? But essentially what they said was Square Enix, we made this game, right? Square Enix is making this new game with the Hitman thing, right? Is wholly separate from our Hitman, right?
Yeah. I think you're misinterpreting it though. They're saying this is in a separate story because there's no continuity.
There's no continuity, yeah.
Yeah, but Square Enix came to us, wanted to make a Hitman game on mobile again because they made Hitman Go previously on mobile. Sure. Square Enix Montreal, and that was a big success, right? And so I guess Square wanted to make another Hitman game. They came to IO and were like, "Hey, let's do another thing," and they're fine with it. Sure. And yeah, so I think, that's cool.
And I guess also worth mentioning, Outriders is coming out. I think we already knew it was April 1st, right? But
Game Pass Day 1.
Day 1. And they've done a big stream push with that game, so there's plenty of ways to see if you would be interested in it through looking at stuff online. So there was Square Enix, right? I mean, it's funny because we were like, oh, this is it was poorly paced, right? And there was a lot of stuff you didn't care about. But I guess it's preferable to if they did a E3 conference this year,
Well, they said look forward to our summer showcase.
Oh, they're still locking that in, huh?
So we're getting I don't know E3, but E3, a summer showcase is basically E3.
It sounds like E3 is dead.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah, everyone's gonna be doing their own thing very clearly. I think that's a sign. Yeah. But I think this year I think last year most people did presentations in summer anyway. I think this year that's definitely gonna be the case. But this time, including Nintendo, hopefully.
Hopefully they do it all in the same week. That's what I hope.
That'd be nice.
I want it all in the same week. I want that.
I expect it to be within like a 3-week time frame, but I mean that's preferable to last year.
I think a lot of publishers are going to be looking at the June-July timeframe, and everyone. I guess the nice thing for them is that without an official E3, hey, this is a week. They can kind of do their presentation whenever their development timelines line up, right?
And whenever it feels like there isn't other people, right? Because like to their credit, would we have gone over all this stuff if it was all done in an E3 conference?
Hell no.
Yeah, like come on. So for these companies, there's tons of upside, but for us as consumers, it's nice to just have it all at once. We did get some updates from Sony. A thing they talked about PSVR 2 a couple weeks back, right? They updated this week talking about the controller for PSVR for PS5. So this is the follow-up to the Move controller, so only took 15 years, but we got there. So it uses adaptive triggers, has haptic feedback on it, right, and finger touch detection, right, which are sort of the 3 things that they outline. If you've seen more
These are Oculus Rift controllers. Just straight up, these are Oculus Rift controllers.
If you've seen a modern VR controller, you've seen this,
The button placement, the way they do finger tracking, like it's just 1-to-1. This is an Oculus Rift controller. If you've seen that, you've seen this. This is in black. And
those are good those work, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel for this stuff,
I have to say, I'm a little disappointed. Slightly. I'm happy. Oh my god. Thank God that there is new fucking Move controller or motion controllers for VR. Because the Move controllers don't even have analog sticks, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And then they're tracking. You have to, it's a big light ball that a camera has to track. You don't have to have a fucking camera anymore. Now the headset looks for your controllers and it has inside out tracking, right? Which is much preferable than to have an external setup, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing they said finger touch tracking, which means it can really only track like when you're so the way Oculus does it, and this seems to be the same, is like it when you have your index finger or your middle finger on your index finger on the trigger, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So it knows when you're kind of not pressing it in, but just kind of like have your finger there. And so when you don't have your finger there, it shows you pointing because I mean, what else you can do, right? Either point. And that's cool. But the index controllers, the Valve Index, are much more in depth on how they track your fingers.
Yeah.
And this seems to be nowhere near the caliber of that, and that's a little disappointing because the index controllers are cool as shit.
Sure. But I would have to imagine, I mean, you know more about the tech side of this stuff than I do, right? But I would imagine that is just a more expensive proposition.
No, yeah, right? It's much cheaper to do this way. It's much cheaper to do this way. And that makes sense. I mean, there's going to be a more budget thing, and that's fine. But
that's what the PSVR has sort of always been, right?
Yeah. And it makes sense that this is more in line with Oculus features, because Oculus is what's going to be competing with you at that price point, right?
Yeah.
And so that makes total sense. But oh my god, it'll be so nice to have PSVR with controllers that are not complete ass, or like a dual, because the DualShock is fine, but that's not what you want for VR, right? You want the motion controls in VR, you want that immersion in VR, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't always just want a controller in your hands, and so it's nice to be able to do all that, but also have fucking analog sticks.
Be able to walk around a space without having to just like point and click to move around, which was sort of how they did it with Move,
Yeah.
Now I do think it's interesting, because PSVR 2 whenever that happens, right? I mean, when do you think when it happens? Because they're covering a lot of the like.
So this rollout makes no sense to me because they officially confirmed when they announced the PSVR 2, it's not coming out this year. We know for a fact it is not this year. But then they show the controllers, and it's like,
yeah. It's like, I mean, it's like I guess like the only thing you have left to show is like, is there big exclusives, right, that are coming your way, right?
I guess you'll see the headset too at some point.
Yeah.
Well, so I wonder, my theory, I don't know if you remember, but they did the same thing with the PS5, where they showed the DualSense way fucking in events compared to everything else, right? And I wonder, are they literally showing it to us at the same time that they're sending out dev kits, right? Because they want us to see the controller before it gets leaked, right? And that's why they announced the controller so in advance of everything else, right? Is because they just don't want it to leak. And they're just now sending it out to developers, right? And so I guess that makes sense. Oh, feature-wise, by the way, I forgot to mention, we talked about it when the PSVR was actually announced, but now that it's for sure, I'm excited to see the DualSense features in a VR controller, though. I think having those adaptive triggers in particular, which no one else is doing, right? And then haptic feedback, which is more standard, but still, right? Yeah. Having haptic feedback and those adaptive triggers will really help add to the immersion of VR. That'll be nice. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. I'm very curious because I think we can say VR is not ever going to take over the world, right? There was a while in the build up to that 2015 time frame where people were really hyping it up, right?
The future, it's not.
But there's a ton of there's still a ton of super unique things that could be done with this technology, right?
Yeah.
And I would say the PSVR was not the runaway success that Sony may have wanted it to be, but they're clearly very invested in VR as a technology, right? So I'm excited to see what sort of, if this comes earlier in a console's lifespan, right, and the system itself can actually manage it, right? Like it's worth mentioning how much, if you had a base PS4, PSVR was hamstrung, right? So
the power to justify it, you have controllers that are better designed for it. So all around, this should just be like a better platform for VR than they previously had, and I think it'll be fun to see.
So hopefully that pays off in cool, interesting experiences.
Fingers crossed.
The other thing we'll see if it pays off, I guess, is Sony bought Evo. Yeah, so Evo, if you don't know, is probably the biggest fighting game tournament that exists, right? It's sort of a all hands on deck for the FGC, or it has been, right? Where, no matter what game you were, if you were a big one, you would be there, and you would save announcements for it, right? You would, sort of all this stuff. Last year, the person who helped found it, Mr. Wiz, was revealed to be an alleged sexual predator, right? And so Evo's organization, the future was not super clear because the person that was most associated with it was obviously removed for good reason. But Sony has come out and said, we want to do esports. They said that already beforehand. And they announced that part of that esports push was that they're buying Evo, right? Now, immediately your brain might go, well, what does this entail?
What happens to Smash?
What happens to Smash? And we don't know, right? Nintendo put out a statement being like, we'll see. But Evo themselves have been very clear that every game that was welcomed in the past will continue to be welcomed at Evo, right? That they still want it to be this sort of everybody shows up for event, right? But I think this is so interesting for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, Sony doesn't have a fighting game that they really push.
But I think it is worth noting, over the last generation on PS4, I mean, they bought exclusivity for Street Fighter V. That's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
Street Fighter V was exclusive to PS4. But even at Evo before this, they were already a huge sponsor, right? And most of the games, they made sure were being played on PS4, right? And I think, they've always viewed Evo as kind of like a big deal. Like they want you to associate fighting game tournaments with PlayStation, right? Like the fighting games, like you're playing Mortal Kombat on PlayStation, you're playing Guilty Gear on PlayStation, Street Fighter, obviously, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But so it kind of makes sense if you look at their strategy over the last generation, right? They even if they don't have their own fighting game, but I wonder also, does this mean they will have their own fighting game?
Yeah, that's part of it.
That?
Well, yeah, because because like what you were saying. That's true.
Now's the you know what? Now they can bring it back and they could force it to be part of the main stage.
All these years later, this is just a well-laid revenge plan. Yeah. So, like you sort of said, right? I think esports. I think there's also a chance just to talk about esports because for years there's been this promise, right, of esports, or will be this thing. Evo gets broadcast on ESPN every year, right? It's one of the few esport related events that does, right? And so it's like, do we think that the promise of like, look at all this investment we're making in esports as a advertising wing, right, if you're PlayStation, right, and sort of just as a way to just drum up interest in games, do you think that we'll ever see fruition, or will it forever sort of be this like thing on the horizon?
I mean, I think it paid off for as a platform holder. I think it makes more sense because you could say, you can play fighting games on PlayStation, and that's a whole ecosystem thing, right? Mm-hmm. I think for individual publishers, we've seen over the last generation that it's a mixed bag, mostly negative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to go back to Street Fighter made this huge esports push. Street Fighter 5 did not do well, right? Like it did okay over the life. Like they clawed back some sales over the course of the generation. Like it sold, it had decent legs, but it was also selling at a very low price. And it was mostly relying on just getting people who were already invested to just keep buying more shit in it, right? But they want to expand their user base, and it wasn't good for that, right? I think you could almost directly blame their hyper focus on esports, right? To the point where it was arguably alienating everyone else, right? I think Overwatch is a great example of a game where they invested a lot of money on esports and they did not make that money back, right? The Overwatch League was a failure, straight up, right? I think it's still ongoing, but they never made their money back. I want to be clear. They never made their money back on the Overwatch League, right?
Because esports are expensive. They're really expensive to operate.
Yeah,
it's
you have to have physical venues. That is a huge cost that people, right? Just setting all this shit up. It's like, and then even from a game development standpoint, right? Having to satiate the player base, a committed player base. Like, obviously, you want to update. I'm not saying you shouldn't do updates or whatever, and you shouldn't have a hardcore focus. But like when it's to the point where it's alienating casual players, I think you're going wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And I think just also, and on the flip side, I'm going to point to Smash. And, obviously, that's a very contentious subject with
yeah.
Right? Because Nintendo infamously is very, very, very hands-off on esports. Or when they are hands-on, it's to deter them. Right?
Yeah.
But, and obviously they got better over the course of the last generation, but they never invested really any real money into esports, right? They just let the community kind of, I don't know if they let, but the community, almost everything Smash on the competitive scene is just naturally comes from the community, right?
Yeah. Versus most they've done is just got out of the way,
Yeah. Versus Capcom and Namco and other companies who are very, very hands-on, very much investing, very much telling you that we're doing this. Nintendo it's just the community is doing it. But then, as we saw in the last Evo that we had before COVID, Smash was the biggest game at Evo, right? It had the most viewers, it had the most players, it was it got the best time slot because of that, right?
Did it break the entrant record, or is that still fighters?
I think it broke the entrance record. Yeah, it was, inarguably, it was one of the most successful games at Evo ever, right? And that came without any investment from Nintendo, right? And so you have to wonder, like, is it really that profitable for these publishers to be so hands-on with esports, right? Obviously, if you say that with the community, they're gonna be pissed because they want the official blessing. They want to be like, we're heard, that they're catering to us, right? But I think there has to be some element of like honesty of like, is this the right?
Yeah. Well, because I think like what are the fighting game successes of last gen, right? I think Smash is number one, right? But like Dragon Ball FighterZ was the previous big success before Smash, right? And like Tekken had a nice resurgence with Tekken 7, right? And it's like, well, what do all those games have in common? They just looked really good, right? Like just not like visually, right? But just like it was very easy to understand as a consumer. Why would I want this, right? While I think that for a while, publishers sort of viewed esports as like, this is the reason this game exists, right? And it's like no, esports come as a result of people liking the game. People don't like the game because it is an esport, right? You have to have step one to have step two. And you know, it's like, there's only so much lipstick you can put on a pig, right? And like Street Fighter V was a pig at launch. It just was, you know, like it doesn't matter how much of a prize pool you put in. If you don't like to play the game, you're not going to sell a copy, you know? So we'll see.
I feel like the only true example of like a truly successful like esports like thing comes from like League of Legends and Dota. And arguably most of that is just funded by the players, right? Because you know,
I mean, for Dota, it 100% is, right? Like the pool for the international every year, right? Because, you know, as much as League is a bigger game than Dota still has the biggest prize pool. And why is that? It's just players, like, for when it's international time, if you buy the battle pass, you're putting money in the prize pool. And that's how they do it, right? Like, it's entirely community focused.
So it's that you can't even say it's really like Valve that's investing that much. Like, yeah, obviously they make the stuff in the battle pass, right? But like the money comes from the player base, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's just a smart way to do it, you know. And you know, I think I don't know if like Capcom etc. are just focusing. So and I mean, speaking of Overwatch, by the way, Activision laid off like 50 or so people, something like that.
Yeah.
From their esports division, right?
Yeah.
Just recently. You know, I don't know. Like, esports is weird. I think if nothing else, I think it's hard to tell like what exactly makes an esport a success and what doesn't. But I think over the last generation, though, I think we do have to be honest that I think publishers being the ones pushing it ends up not necessarily working out for the best, both for the game and the player base and just everything, right?
Yeah. So I mean, in that way, Sony's a perfect fit for a company like for an event like Evo, right? So hopefully
they're a platform holder.
Yeah, because Evo's fun every year, right? I was sad, you know. Obviously, there's bigger effects, right, of the information we learned last year, but like it was also said that this event that sort of was just incredibly fun to watch was going to go away. So hopefully it can continue under the new ownership. That's all for the news this week. We now have to continue our work by adding a game to the list.
The list.
Follow along in the pastebin below as every week we add a game to an ever-growing list of 200... Are we at 202 now? 253. I don't even know where I got 202 now from. Games.
Going back in time.
Whoosh, whoosh. Well, maybe I was thinking that because last week we had Pokemon Coliseum. It got to 200 on the list. And
you were thinking that it was at the fucking bottom of the list?
No, it's just 200 was in the brain.
You know, I'm fine with moving it down to hell. You know,
Noah's weeping in heaven right now. Yeah, so that's...
No, all Noahs go to heaven.
They do. Brandon brought that last week. If you don't know what the list is, by the way, this isn't the greatest games of all time. This isn't the worst games of all time. This is a mix of all of those, right? There's a lot of the most mediocre games of all time. But we oftentimes compare apples to oranges. We have to get confused. We sometimes yell at each other. That's just the nature of the beast, baby. This week, I'm adding a game to the list. Let's just do it. Let's just rip off the emotional band-aid of Will, and we're gonna add the Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker.
Yes. Holy shit!
It's been used as a weapon against me for years now.
Tell us why it's a weapon against you. What's up with you in Wind Waker? Huh?
Okay, Wind Waker is my favorite game. I don't know. I don't think it's the best game, but it is my favorite game. It and Breath of the Wild are 1 and 2. They swap, but they're so close as to be virtually tied. And this is, I mean, entirely time and place, right? It's just it hit me at the right time as a kid, but I don't think that it's purely that. I think it's also just a pretty remarkable video game in and of itself, right? So what is it? I think, by the way, we're talking about Wind Waker HD. I think we generally agree that's the best version.
Absolutely.
Sorry to those of you who hate Bloom in video games.
I know on the record to stay, I think HD looks fucking gorgeous. Like, there's some weird, like, cause I think the only thing that people, you can't have criticism about Wind Waker from like the gameplay changes they made, because they're just better all around, right? But the one thing that people point out is, the visuals. I think the visuals are great. I think like there's some weird instances when you're indoors and there's weird lighting that Link looks clay-like, but otherwise, man, this game is so fucking pretty. So fucking pretty.
And I think
I mean, it already was too.
Yeah. But I just want to say, like, because everyone knows the original looks pretty, but I think there was this idea that this one's more divisive. But I am in the camp that this looks even better. It's so gorgeous.
So what is Wind Waker? Obviously, it's a Zelda game, as the name would have in the title. It is set in the world of the Great Sea, right? We come to find out, spoiler alert, it's the same world as Ocarina of Time, right? But the world has been destroyed, right? It has been flooded, not unlike dang old Noah with the Ark, and people have built villages from the little pieces of land that remain, right? And your job as Link is that you are exploring this Great Sea, originally in pursuit of your sister Errol, right? And then eventually you get the greater call to defeat Ganon, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, there's well, we can get to flaws. I'll lead off with flaws. How about that? The dungeons are okay, right? And there's not a ton of them, right? This is I wouldn't claim this game has the best dungeons in the Zelda series.
They're fine.
They're fine. We know that there was going to be more. They got cut because the GameCube was just fraught in the early years, right? A lot of those ideas made it into Twilight Princess specifically. We also know that. And Skyward Sword.
It's got the same issues, not the same issues per se, but kind of the same story kind of that Sunshine had, where they're like, fuck, we need to get a Mario game on this console right now, so Mario Sunshine's a little rushed too.
But I think Wind Waker turned out much better than Sunshine.
Much better better than Sunshine. Well, Zelda's better than Mario, we can say.
In general, yes. But I think that part of that is that it was able to work better because of the design, right? Insofar as there is, how much the ocean does for you can vary a lot on a person-to-person basis, right? There is a lot of downtime, right? There are things to do while you're sailing, right? You can find, submarines and krakens and everything else, right? But there's also just a lot of dead space, right, in the ocean too. And if that sort of act of seeing a thing on the horizon, getting closer to it, and then discovering it isn't appealing to you, then you're going to feel like you're just sitting there for a long time. Right?
It was worse in the original when you didn't have the sail cloth.
Yeah, because in
Way
HD,
worse.
They add the Swift Sail, where you can never turn it on if you don't want to, but if you want to, you can go about 2.5 times as fast, right? So travel
faster,
time...
and you don't have to change the wind direction anymore.
Yeah, correct. Changing the wind direction to change the direction of your boat in the GameCube version was a real detriment for me. So...
Sure.
Yeah.
It took until HD for me to get sailing, but when once in HD, like when I could just freely go, or you could say, the wind, is not realistic. You can make the argument that the sailing,
the hardcore fans are like, changing the wind was part of the design type stuff.
How can you sail if the wind is not going? But I don't give a shit.
It's a video game. I don't want realness like that.
I found sailing the seas in HD to be legitimately a lot of fun. I enjoyed exploring every nook and cranny of this world, even like I do mean every nook and cranny in this game. Like I thoroughly explored every single square on the map, and I had a grand time doing it. It was a lot of fun.
I guess the other major flaw I would have on top of my dome piece, there's two, I would say. There's one, which is the Triforce quest in general, right? Which they clearly agreed because they changed it in
much better
in HD, right? In that there's sure you have to get, right? That was essentially where those dungeons got cut. They put in the Triforce quest, right? Where they just said, "Hey, all these optional areas are now semi-required." Right. And I can see that being a big point of frustration for people if you were like, how was I supposed to know this Cabana side quest mattered? Right. How was I supposed to know if this thing mattered? Right. And then there's some islands that are part of a pattern and that can feel repetitious. Right. So like the Eye Reef Islands, right, can definitely feel like, oh, we're just doing this. Right.
I want to talk about the positives. I want to hear why you love this game.
No. So I want to get this out of the way, right? And we can talk about why they factor in. So why do I get it? For me, video games on the whole are about discovery. They're about exploration. They're about being surprised. And I think that for me, I talk about seeing that thing on the horizon and going somewhere. And that is so entrancing. It is so fun to walk up to a thing, and especially in Wind Waker, a thing that I love is that you don't have a companion, you don't have a navvy, right? You have the King of the Red Lions, right? But once you're on an island, he can't come with you, right? And so what that means is like there's so many times where you just have to stop and look around, right? And just take something in and figure it out, right? And that's the thing that I think it shares with Breath of the Wild is those two traits, right? Of you see something in the distance, how do I get there, right? I think Breath of the Wild is more engaging on how you get there, right? But there's still that part of it. And then once I'm there, what do I do? And just relying upon yourself to find the solution, right? Zelda is about adventure for me. The dungeons, my favorite Zelda games, I don't think have the best dungeons. Majora's Mask and Breath of the Wild are my other two favorite Zelda games. They have among the worst dungeons in the series, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not what I'm there for. I'm there for that exploration, right? I think that the story is simple, but I think it works in a way that's very Ganon at the end sticks with you in a way that most Zelda stories don't, right? Insofar as
probably the best Ganon.
I think for me, I would say definitely. I think he works so well. And this idea too of him and the King of Red Lions, right? And this idea of I don't want to talk about symmetry and whatever else, right? But Zelda 1 is a wasteland, right? And in its own way, Wind Waker is a beautiful wasteland. Breath of the Wild is a beautiful wasteland, right? But all of them are about how do you move forward, right? And I think that's the thing that's really I think the theme works best in Wind Waker, right? Because the King of the Red Lions makes that choice at the end, right? When you learn he's the King of Hyrule, when he says, hey, my time is gone, right? You two are the future. You need to find this, right? I think that's Mina, you can maybe say go read a book, right? But as a little 10-year-old, that meant everything in the world to me. I thought that was such a cool theme. And then also giving Link more characterization, I think, right? And he doesn't say anything, right? But I talk about getting on an island. A thing that I love in this game is sort of your helper is just Link, right? He will look at things of note, right? He will sort of make faces when things are strange, and you can use that to figure stuff out. And in a way, I think it's super natural, super clever. Right. And then giving him, like I said, a sister, a grandparent. Right. It makes Wind Waker is a very isolating game. There's a lot of times that you're just by yourself. Right. But when you get to areas where there are people, they feel very lived in. Right. Windfall feels lived in. Right. Outset, especially. Right. Everyone knows who you are. This is a town of 10 people and you've known them your entire life. And I think that it gives stakes and investment in a way that Zelda games, oftentimes Link feels like he's at an arm's distance from everything, right? The minute he leaves the Kokiri Forest in Ocarina of Time, he's just sort of doing this because this is what Link does, right? Where even though he's not a character, he doesn't say things, right? I think the story is very well structured in Wind Waker. And then, I could go forever, so you need to stop me. But
no, absolutely not.
But yeah, so I think like I said, I have no illusions of grandeur. This is a perfect video game. But I think
it is still a very, very good one. It is a great game, and I think it stands shoulder to shoulder with the other 3D Zeldas.
Absolutely.
But I guess we should just get to it. I mean, I think the biggest point of contention is going to be where it ranks against other Zelda games.
Sure.
Because it always is. But you get first pick. Where do you put it?
I mean, well, as might indicate, I'm a person who probably want it as high as I can get it. But I have no illusions of grandeur about that. I think it's, I mean, if it was me, right, I would be putting it in the, like, in what I think is reasonable. I think it's better than Shadow of the Colossus, and I think it's better than Nier. Right? And, I mean, would I put it above Super Mario World? Probably, right? But that sort of would be my range, right? I have no illusions about it being better than a lot of those games above it. Because, like I said, there are flaws, right? But I think that the strengths of it are I think, really fundamental in, like, in all of games, right? I think that there's that is best in class in some aspects, right? And like I said, I think the exploration is among the best in class, right? I think that the art style, we sort of brushed past it, but, like, that's a game that they just put a new lighting engine on for HD, and it looked like a brand new game because it just aged so well, right? And it adds so much character to the world.
It is remarkably pretty, and I think it's a great game.
Now, but tear me up.
Here's my issue.
I would personally put it below FF7.
So, okay. Here's my problem.
Go on.
Saf, honestly,
Yes.
I think I'm good there. But, again, my problem comes from the other Zelda games. I think this game is better than Twilight Princess. I think this game is not better than Ocarina of Time. I think this game... and so we're in this awkward position because Twilight
Do you think it's better than Link's Awakening?
Time. I don't know. I think they're about comparable. I could go above Link's Awakening though. I could also go below. But I could go above. But I firmly believe that Twilight Princess should be the lowest of these. But what can you do?
There's a lot of people on the list,
I don't want to punch Wind Waker because I think Twilight Princess is too high. I think that's ludicrous. But I guess the other thing is, truly, and from the bottom of my heart, I do believe Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword even. I think these are all pretty comparable games. I think, I don't think the difference is...
Zelda block.
Partially, but...
I hate the idea of adding it to the Zelda block, but I don't, can't...
But what I mean to say, that I think there's enough room to have a couple games in between there. But I do think, like, I don't think it's that crazy of a big upgrade or downgrade or whatever compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's sort of, when you get to the top of the list, you're arguing a 9.4 versus a 9.5, right? Functionally, is it that different? No. But, like, you're dealing with granularity a lot,
And that and a lot of personal preference, too,
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, that's what I was going to say.
To me, go ahead, Seth.
Sorry, I keep trying to interrupt. I do apologize. No, but, like, for me, like, that's kind of like, it's what is, as you're saying, like, it's just kind of like, the way I'm feeling it is just through personal preference, because, like, it's, as Will has nailed it before, like, exploration is really, really fun in this, in Wind Waker. Like, it, for all the reasons Will has talked about, like, the fact that there's a speed sail, the fact that Link himself is hints towards, like, different areas, like, of interest, stuff like that, and the fact that you could just randomly go around and just find something new just out there in the ocean. Mm-hmm. Like, those things are great, and the fucking environment is just super zen for me. Like, it's just sailing down there, it's just super incredibly zen. It's just very relaxing and calming. Like, it's just a fantastic game in terms of, like, exploration, and it's, like, one of the big things that I really like about this game compared to the other Zeldas. And why I want to put it below Final Fantasy 7.
My thing is, for me, I still haven't played the HD version, right? Like, I know, and I'm gonna, like, factor in all the upgrades, in my decision, but also it hasn't, like, personally affected me still because I haven't played it.
Yeah.
But, like, I still recognize that a lot of the problems even that I had with it have been fixed. There's things about this game that I absolutely, like, have so much love for. The music, we didn't even talk about. I love the music.
I mean, I think it says something that this is among the best Zelda soundtracks. When this franchise is known for amazing soundtracks, right? But this has truly,
it's funny. Yeah. There's oftentimes threads that I see of, like, ruin a game with one small change, right? And someone's like, and I saw someone and I was like, yes, this is totally true. Which is, you could ruin Wind Waker by just making the Great Sea theme bad. Right.
That song is incredible.
Imagine instead of the Great Sea theme, you had the Mementos theme from Persona 5.
Yeah. So like, I think
I will say there's these weird things that like stick with me with Twilight Princess, or not Twilight Princess, with Wind Waker. But like, I hate some in some of the dungeons. I just hate I hate the companions. Like I hate
the
picking
Makara
up
and
what's her
Medley.
name.
Yeah,
I hate picking up Medley and having to throw her. I don't that shit frustrated me, and I don't know. I didn't love the dungeons in this game, like you mentioned already. And this is a personal preference because I fucking love this game, but like for me, dungeons is it hits hard for me in Zelda games. Sure. Even though Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game, and its dungeons are kind of weak, but there's so much more to that game that makes me fall in love with it. But this is more on the classic end of Zelda, and you know how much I love Twilight Princess, and a lot of that has to do with the dungeons, and they're to me they're all just so cool, and I don't know, it's a lot. I love this game, and I love all the Zelda games. So
I mean, I agree with you in that. It's it kind of felt kind of half baked. The co-op, I don't know. No, it's not the co-op element, but the kind of the partners that you have for the dungeons. Sometimes they just felt kind of not.
No, I think that the command melody part of it is interesting, right? But the thing that I would change is having to do the song every time was the thing that I think is the most frustrating in that, right?
Yeah.
Because if it was just a button, I think a Zelda dungeon where you're playing as two people is actually a really neat idea.
Cool idea, yeah.
But I think that that's the thing I would have liked to have seen them change in HD that they didn't.
It's just not well executed. That's what I was trying to get at. It's it just didn't feel. It felt more like a inconvenience to just kind of jump between the two.
Mm-hmm. Ilz, do you have any thoughts on where?
Quick editor's note. So it's at this stage I'd like to make you aware that Ilz's audio had screwed up and we lost half of it. I've done a lot of work in making sure that the podcast runs smoothly without his input. And so far it's been working well, I'd like to think so. Except at this stage where it really, really relies on Ilz's input. And it's hard to edit around that. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly tell you what it was. Basically, he wanted below Xenoblade because he is an idiot.
All right. You know what? That's two. That's two.
All right. Well, I'm good with where Staff wants it. To be honest, I'm fine with it. Sandwiched in between FF7 and Thousand Year Door.
It's hard. That's hard. I don't agree with that, but I also like it because I hate putting it in the Zelda block. It seems so ridiculous. It seems so ridiculous, but it's so hard.
I mean, if we're putting it, if FF7 wasn't in the way, I would also put it above Odyssey.
No.
I would also put it above Xenoblade. I would also put it above Shadow of the Colossus. I think Nier is where I would stop.
I'm looking around. That's 4 games versus 1. Why not? Go after me now. Come on.
So I would be fine with putting it, sandwiching it in between Shadow of the Colossus and Nier Automata. But
it's just got to blast a great C theme just to put.
But I don't know if we have a third for that. I mean, I'm fine between Xenoblade and Odyssey.
No.
I mean, I am.
No. Below Final Fantasy VII. Actually, above Final Fantasy VII, but below Odyssey.
I mean, if it's above Odyssey, it's definitely above Odyssey.
No.
It's definitely above
Odyssey, no.
Zach, what are you feeling?
Fuck me.
The boy is hurting.
I mean, I've already lost, because if I was going to put it somewhere, I'd put it below Twilight Princess in personal ranking. So I've already lost that, and then sorry. I don't have a strong affiliation with Final Fantasy VII. I liked that game. I thought it was really good, but it's not.
Didn't light your heart on fire.
No, it didn't.
Final Fantasy VII is a game that I can easily replay like multiple times, and I have replayed multiple times. I really like this game a lot. Why me? Why me? Why'd you?
We already have 3.
We have 3. I just wanted to get your voice heard.
Are you okay? I guess Will is asking, are you okay with putting it where me, Els, and Will are putting it?
Yeah, I just want to let you and Brandon say your piece, I guess.
No, but I have no choice.
Yeah, I feel like this is bullshit.
Yeah, I think we have a forum.
Alright. We got a little bit more of a buffer. So there it is. Number 12, The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker.
Happy birthday, Will.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Let's see. Surrounding this number 12, surrounding it on the list at number 10, Shadow of the Colossus, 11, Xenoblade Chronicles, 12, The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, 13, Super Mario Odyssey, 14, Final Fantasy 7. I almost said 15 by accident there. That would be a big lie. That is the list. Brandon, you're the official plug man. Before we go, let everyone know where they can find us, and someone take the final phrase.
I'll tell you where you can find us. In the fucking trash, because we're all a bunch of fucking idiots. That's where you can find us. We have shit-ass opinions, but if you enjoy listening to our crappy opinions, you can find us every week on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube, where new episodes of the Jump Up Supercast go up every single Monday. We also have another show, the Jump Up Supercast Game Club, where those episodes go up every other Thursday.
They have even worse opinions there.
No, we have perfect opinions there. It's a 3 men talking about video games in a well-constructed zone.
Wow, man. See, you're trying to exclude me. You know, you're like, oh, the women don't have any good opinions. You know? I see how it is.
Listen, if the women's didn't make a deal with the devil, they could be in the fucking podcast. But yeah, the game club. We play a game. We play it for 2 weeks. We talk about it. We share our opinions on it, and then we put it on the list. Right now, we are playing New Super Lucky's Tale. And we recently played Return of the Obra Dinn, and yeah, there's a lot of episodes that we have out. I think over 80 of them now. So if you want to see what we've been playing, we also have another game club that happens every once in a while, the Game Club Extra. And you guys recently played the Alliance Alive. I'm not on that, so clearly not as good. Also, Mina's not on it, so God,
so clearly even better than expected.
Yeah. So, Game Club, the Game Club will have women in it someday,
One day.
Who knows? Who can say? But give us a follow, give us a like, give us a share. Feel free to let us know what you think about Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and if there's any Square Enix games that are coming out that you're looking forward to. Have you played Marvel Avengers? Let us know how crappy it is in the comments.
Question.
And if you want to support the podcast, we have a Patreon. $1 a month, you get a chance to choose one of our Game Club games every round. So if there's a game you really want us to play, you can do that. We'll raffle off one of the choices every round. And we also have a Discord that you can join and talk to us about gaming. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we have social media, so you can see when we post the episodes when they go up. And you can catch us streaming, twitch.tv/JumpUpSupercast. And we play a bunch of games. Mina's, are you still playing? Are you going to play Dark Souls or Demon Souls or whatever the fuck it is? Still?
I'm in the mood.
You're in the mood, all right.
I will play Resident Evil pretty soon, though. I'm ready to play Resident Evil. Yeah.
All right, that's fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. And I play games. I play Golf Club. I play a golf game every week for a few hours. And whatever else I feel like. So check us out. Maybe we'll stream sometimes too. Twitch.tv/JumpUpSupercast. It's fun. Come hang out with us. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening. I want you to go be nice to every single person you meet, and just play video games and have a lot of fun, because that's what video games are all about. If you're not having fun, Get a new hobby. I don't know. Do fucking something else. Just be nice to each other. And who's taking it away? Who's the final phrase?
We just jumped right on that boat right there, just before we even decided.
I mean, I tend to take it by default if no one else takes it.
I mean, I'd say let the final phrase be just that question. Like, who here has actually played Marvel Avengers? That feels like a very important.
That's a good. Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
Who the
Have
fuck?
you played Marvel Avengers?
Have you?
Who the fuck? Who are you?
Answer for your sins.
Please DM us so we know.